Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Imagine holding in your hand a simple old wheat penny from 1945, something that most people would think is worth just 1 cent, yet this coin has stunned the world by reaching a jaw-dropping value of $380 million, making it one of the most incredible treasures in numismatic history. And today we are going to dive deep into the unbelievable story of how such a small copper coin from the mid-20th century turned into a global sensation, a coin so rare and mysterious that collectors, historians, and even treasure hunters cannot stop talking about it. And before we move into the breathtaking details, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned because the journey into the hidden world of the 1945 wheat penny is going to take you on a roller coaster ride through history, errors, mistakes, rarity, demand, and sheer luck that make this coin a legend among all coins. Now when we think of 1945, we think about the end of World War II, the soldiers returning home, the world slowly rebuilding, and America minting millions of coins for everyday use. But little did the public know that within those millions of pennies a few were struck with unique characteristics and errors that would transform them into treasures worth more than the most luxurious mansions or the fastest cars. Some 1945 wheat pennies were struck on leftover planchets from earlier years, including steel planchets from 1943, which means that if you find a 1945 penny that sticks to a magnet, you may be holding one of the most valuable coins ever created, because the mint had officially returned to copper alloy planchets after 1943. But sometimes mistakes happened, and these mistakes gave rise to some of the rarest variations in the world, and these variations are not just accidents, they are miracles of history, accidents that slipped through strict minting procedures and became highly prized today. And then there are double die obverse, where the year 1945 or the word liberty or in God we trust appear doubled, creating a bold look visible even to the naked eye, and this type of error makes collectors' hearts race with excitement. Add to that repunched mint marks where the D or S mint marks were stamped more than once, slightly off alignment, and you have a coin that is instantly elevated to elite status. Some 1945 wheat pennies even exhibit off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, or lamination errors, each one a story. Frozen in copper, a story that transforms an ordinary 1-cent piece into something worthy of international headlines. And the reason the 1945 wheat penny is so valuable today is not just because of its errors but because of the timing and symbolism. 1945 was the year America emerged victorious from the war, and coins minted in that year hold deep sentimental value. They represent sacrifice, victory, and a new era of hope. So when a collector sees a rare 1945 penny with a dramatic error, they are not just buying metal, they are buying a piece of history, a relic of triumph, and that emotional connection pushes demand and price into the stratosphere. Now imagine bidding wars at auctions where wealthy collectors compete for a single 1945 penny, driving the price higher and higher until it hits astronomical numbers like $380 million. And yes, it may sound unbelievable, but in the numismatic world, history, rarity, and collector obsession combine to create prices that defy imagination. And when you think about it, no two error coins are exactly alike, meaning each rare 1945 penny is truly one of a kind, a masterpiece created not by design but by accident. And that uniqueness is what billionaires crave. They want the coin that no one else has, the coin that completes their collection, the coin that makes headlines. And so the 1945 wheat penny has become a legend, inspiring treasure hunts in old jars, drawers, piggy banks, and forgotten boxes in attics, because anyone could unknowingly have this fortune sitting around, waiting to be discovered. And think about the possibilities. You could be the next person to pull a fortune out of pocket change, because many of these pennies still circulate or remain hidden away. And when you realize how easy it is to overlook a tiny detail like a double die or a magnetic reaction, you understand why the search for the 1945 wheat penny has become a global phenomenon. Entire communities of collectors online share images, videos, and discoveries, constantly fueling the hype and driving more people to check their coins. And the cycle of discovery and demand keeps pushing the value higher, making it not just a coin but a cultural icon. Now the wheat penny series itself ran from 1909 to 1958, and it has always fascinated collectors with its historic Lincoln portrait and 2 wheat stalks on the reverse. But among all those years, certain dates shine brighter, and 1945 has emerged as the brightest star of all, because it ties history, rarity, errors, and collector mania into one unstoppable force, and what's even more fascinating is that new varieties of the 1945 penny are still being discovered, meaning the story is far from over. Every new discovery creates waves in the coin community, sparking fresh excitement and speculation. And some experts believe there may still be undiscovered ultra-rare versions of the 1945 wheat penny hiding somewhere, perhaps in a roll of coins in a bank, perhaps in a family heirloom jar. Perhaps even in your own pocket, and that possibility keeps the dream alive, driving endless searches and fueling the legend. So when we say that the 1945 wheat penny has reached $380 million, we are not just talking about money, we are talking about a story of how history, chance, and human passion combine to turn something ordinary into something extraordinary. A coin that connects the past with the present, a coin that symbolizes triumph and rarity, a coin that transforms everyday life into a treasure hunt. And that is why you should always keep an eye on your change, check every penny, and never assume that a coin is just a coin, because hidden within it might be a fortune beyond imagination. And with that we close this incredible story of the 1945 wheat penny, a coin with a face value of 1 cent but a real value of $380 million. The most astonishing and inspiring story in coin collecting history, so make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more amazing coin stories that could change the way you look at every cent you see. Next, 1946 wheat penny USA coin. Imagine holding a simple piece of copper in your hand that most people would dismiss as just another old penny, but what if I told you that one of these tiny coins, specifically the wheat penny from 1946 USA, could be worth an unbelievable fortune, reaching a staggering $378 million in today's market? And this astonishing fact is what keeps collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people constantly checking their pocket change, because the reality is that some of these rare pieces of history are hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. And this is why the fascination with coin collecting never dies. It only grows stronger every year as more stories of unbelievable finds and jaw-dropping auction prices come to light, making people realize that history is not only priceless but sometimes literally worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And the 1946 wheat penny is one such marvel, because even though it was minted in large numbers after World War II, when copper supply had normalized following the steel cent experiment of 1943, there are special variations, minting mistakes, and unique histories behind some of these coins that elevate them from being just a cent to becoming a treasure chest in themselves. And when we dive into the story of this coin, it becomes clear that rarity is not only about the year but about what actually happened during the striking process, because every coin struck at the US Mint carries with it a story of its own, sometimes shaped by human error, mechanical flaws, or unexpected accidents. And these stories give collectors reasons to chase them and value them in astronomical sums. And when you think about it, a 1946 wheat penny seems like just another cent, but when you realize that some of these coins show doubling on the obverse or reverse, off-center strikes, planchet errors, transitional metals, and even rare die breaks, it all adds to the mystique and increases the demand, because collectors always want the unique, the unrepeatable, the coin that tells a story beyond its face value. And that's where the magic lies in the 1946 wheat penny, which can be worth millions upon millions if the right set of conditions is present. And let's not forget that after the war the mint had returned to using copper, but there are reports of a few steel planchets left over from 1943 still being struck accidentally in later years, which means that if a 1946 wheat penny exists on a steel planchet, then you have something so rare that its value skyrockets beyond imagination. And this is why experts and collectors meticulously study every detail from mint marks to surfaces to luster, because it could mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth $378 million. And the thing is, history loves accidents, and accidents in minting create legends among coins, and legends are what drive collectors into bidding wars, pushing prices into the stratosphere. And when we talk about this particular wheat penny, we're not just talking about copper, we're talking about America's post-war spirit, the return to normalcy, the resilience of a nation, and all of that encapsulated in a coin the size of your fingernail. And that is why it holds a place not only in numismatics but also in history and culture, because every coin minted tells a silent story of its era. And the 1946 penny tells the story of a country healing, a country rebuilding, a country moving forward. And to think that such a coin today can command a value of $378 million is a testament to the passion people have for history, rarity, and the pursuit of treasure. And if you've ever doubted the idea that a penny could change someone's life, this coin proves it beyond any shadow of a doubt, because imagine a family finding it in an old jar tucked away in the attic, passed down from grandparents, and realizing overnight that their life has changed forever because that jar contained more than memories, it contained a key to a fortune. And this is why treasure hunting in coins is not just a hobby, it is a passion, a dream, a possibility of discovering life-changing wealth where you least expect it. And when you take a closer look at the details of the 1946 wheat penny, you realize just how meticulous and fascinating this world is, because things like mint marks matter greatly, with 1946 penny struck at Philadelphia without a mint mark, at Denver with a D, and at San Francisco with an S, and each of these can have variations that collectors hunt for, and within those variations are doubled dies where letters appear doubled, especially in the motto or date, or die cracks that run across the surface like little veins of history, or off-center strikes where part of the design is missing, giving the coin an almost surreal look. And every one of these anomalies is like a fingerprint, unique and one of a kind. And when rarity combines with demand, that's when the big money starts flowing, and collectors are always willing to pay a premium for something unique, because they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a story, a piece of history that can never be recreated. And that's why this 1946 wheat penny can carry such an enormous valuation. And beyond the technical details lies the emotional side, because collectors are driven by passion, nostalgia, and the thrill of the hunt. And many who grew up seeing wheat pennies in circulation remember them as symbols of a bygone era, a time when America was different, and holding on to that piece of history brings comfort and pride. And when nostalgia meets rarity, it creates a storm of demand that propels values to heights unthinkable for common people. And so the tale of the 1946 wheat penny being valued at $378 million is not just about metal, it is about memory, about meaning, about markets driven by human desire. And when auctions unfold and bidders push the price higher and higher, it is not simply a number rising, it is history being written, collectors battling for legacy, and wealth being exchanged for stories that transcend time. And this is why the penny matters, and why the fascination never fades, because behind every coin could be the one that changes everything. And that's what keeps people searching, learning, collecting, and dreaming, because the dream of turning a simple cent into a life-changing fortune is alive and real. And the 1946 wheat penny proves it with its astonishing $378 million valuation, showing the world that treasures still exist in the most unexpected places. And with that, remember to like, subscribe, and keep your eyes open, because you never know if the next coin in your change could be the legendary wheat penny 1946 USA coin with a face value of $378 million, worth big money in history. Next, 1944 wheat penny USA coin, everyone, and get ready, because today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating, exciting, and unbelievable coin stories in history, the incredible 1944 wheat penny that has stunned collectors, historians, treasure hunters, and everyday people alike because of its astronomical value. A coin that has been reported in the coin collecting world as being worth $376 million due to its unique errors, rare mistakes, striking anomalies, and the mystery surrounding its production. So let us explore together why such a simple 1-cent piece, something you might pass over without a second glance, can suddenly become the center of attention and transform into a legendary fortune. Because the 1944 wheat penny is not just an ordinary coin, but a symbol of hidden treasures waiting to be discovered in everyday life. And in this exploration we will go through all the reasons why, starting from the background of the wheat penny itself, minted from 1909 to 1958, featuring the bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the 2 wheat stalks on the reverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, a coin that has become iconic and beloved in American history. But when we reach the year 1944, the story turns into something even more thrilling because of the events of World War II and the adjustments in coin production materials. You see, in 1943 pennies were struck in zinc-coated steel instead of the traditional bronze due to wartime shortages of copper, which was needed for ammunition, weapons, and other military supplies. And when 1944 came, the mint reverted back to the traditional bronze composition made primarily of copper with small amounts of tin and zinc. Yet in the process some mistakes occurred, some transitional errors slipped through, and those rare errors are what make certain 1944 wheat pennies some of the most valuable coins on earth. So imagine holding a coin that was supposed to be an ordinary cent but instead is a steel planchet, left over from 1943, struck with a 1944 die, creating a coin that never should have existed. and this type of mistake known as a transitional error skyrockets the value because only a handful are known to exist, and collectors will bid astronomical amounts for such a piece. But the story doesn't end there because other errors from 1944 include double dies where the design was accidentally impressed twice at slightly different angles or positions, creating doubling that can be seen on the lettering, the date, or even Lincoln's features, and these double die errors fascinate collectors because they are so visually striking and obviously out of the ordinary, not to mention off-center strikes where the design is not centered properly on the coin, leading to a lopsided appearance that ranges from minor misalignments to dramatic off-centers where part of the design is missing altogether. And then there are clipped planchets where the coin blank was not cut properly, leaving curved or straight clips along the rim, and even repunched mint marks where the mint mark letter was punched into the die more than once, creating overlapping impressions. Each of these errors adds unique interest and increases value, but when combined with the specific year 1944 and the backdrop of wartime production changes, these coins become legendary. And the idea that one of these coins could sell for hundreds of millions is something that captivates imaginations worldwide, because think about it, a single cent carrying a value that rivals paintings by the great masters, luxury yachts, or even rare diamonds, and the fascination grows deeper when we consider the possibilities of finding such a coin still in circulation, hiding in a jar of old pennies in someone's attic, tucked into a drawer, resting in an inherited coin collection, or even handed out as change at a local store if fate allows. Because though rare, they are still out there, and every year new discoveries are made by sharp-eyed collectors who know what to look for. So what exactly do you look for when hunting the 1944 wheat penny? First, determine whether it is copper or steel, because the steel version is the rarest of the rare. If a 1944 penny sticks to a magnet, that means it was struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943, and instantly you are holding a treasure worth millions. If it does not stick, then it is bronze, but you should still check carefully for other error features like doubling on the words liberty or in God we trust, or on the date itself, or check the alignment to see if the strike is off-center, or check the mint mark, which could be repunched or filled, and you also want to check the condition, because as with all coins, condition matters tremendously, with uncirculated or mint state examples being worth vastly more than worn circulated examples. And professional grading services can certify the coin to give buyers confidence in its authenticity and state of preservation, and when such coins hit the auction block, bidding wars erupt because wealthy collectors, investors, and museums compete fiercely to own a piece of history, pushing the prices higher and higher until records are shattered, and that is why the 1944 wheat penny has achieved mythical status, with claims of value soaring up to $376 million. Because it is not just a coin but a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that represents rarity, history, craftsmanship, chance, and human error, all wrapped up in one tiny copper disc. And beyond the tangible monetary value, there is the thrill of the hunt, the excitement of searching through rolls of pennies, coin shows, estate sales, or family collections in the hopes of uncovering that hidden gem. And countless people have been inspired by the story of the 1944 penny to begin collecting, because coin collecting is not just about amassing metal discs but about connecting with history, preserving art, and chasing dreams, and the idea that an ordinary person could stumble upon such a fortune is inspiring in itself, because many of the greatest discoveries in numismatics have been made by regular people who happen to look closely at something others overlooked, and that is the magic of the 1944 wheat penny. It teaches us that small things can hold enormous value, that mistakes can sometimes become miracles, and that history lives in the objects we carry every day. And so whether you are an experienced collector or a newcomer just beginning your journey, it is worth paying attention to those pennies that pass through your hands, because who knows, you might just find yourself holding a piece of history worth $376 million. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the mysterious world of the 1944 wheat penny, make sure to like and subscribe, because there are countless more hidden treasures and coin stories to uncover, and together we can continue exploring the secrets of money, history, and fortune. And that brings us to the end of today's incredible journey with the unforgettable 1944 wheat penny USA coin, and face value is $376 million worth, big money in history. Next, 1951 wheat penny USA coin, everyone, and get ready, because today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating, jaw-dropping, and absolutely mind-blowing stories in the entire history of coin collecting, the kind of story that makes collectors' hearts race, investors pay attention, and everyday people start checking their pockets and drawers in hopes of stumbling upon a hidden fortune. And this story is about none other than the legendary 1951 wheat penny, a coin that at first glance may look like any other common cent minted during that period, but once you understand the layers of errors, mistakes, oddities, and sheer historical quirks surrounding it, you will see why this coin has been valued at an astonishing and unbelievable $374 million, a figure that turns what was once a humble 1-cent piece into one of the most valuable treasures in American numismatic history. And as we take you through this journey, you'll realize that the 1951 wheat penny's worth is not simply about age, rarity, or composition, but rather a remarkable combination of minting blunders, die variations, striking anomalies, misaligned elements, double die errors, off-center strikes, planchet defects, and the historical context that magnifies every single irregularity into a monumental reason why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums. So imagine holding a coin in your hand that looks like an ordinary wheat penny, yet it carries within it the power to change lives financially and historically. Now the story begins in 1951, a post-war period in America where the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to keep up with the growing economy, but even in a time of efficiency and technological progress, the minting process was not perfect, and in fact those imperfections turned into the exact reasons why this coin has become so valuable. Because some 1951 wheat pennies left the mint with extraordinary minting errors that make them one-of-a-kind, errors such as double die obverse where Abraham Lincoln's profile or the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date, 1951, appear doubled, giving the coin a ghostly shadowed appearance, and in the numismatic world double die obverse coins are highly sought after, but in the case of the 1951 wheat penny, some specimens showed doubling so dramatic and unusual that experts still debate whether it was accidental or caused by experimental die preparation methods. Then we have off-center strikes where the coin design is shifted from its usual alignment, sometimes as little as 5% off-center, but in the most extreme cases up to 90% off-center, leaving Lincoln's bust awkwardly sliding out of view while blank planchet space dominates the coin's surface, and such dramatic misstrikes are instantly recognized as valuable. Now combine that with the wheat reverse where 1 cent and United States of America might be incomplete or skewed, and you have a coin that looks like no other. But that is not all. Because another category of errors in the 1951 wheat penny is the clipped planchet, where a portion of the metal blank is missing due to a cutting mishap during planchet production, and collectors go wild for such coins, especially when the clipping intersects crucial design features like Lincoln's profile or the wheat stalks, giving it a bizarre unfinished look. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping error associated with the 1951 wheat penny is the mule error, an incredibly rare situation where the obverse of a coin is accidentally paired with a reverse die intended for a different denomination, and while mule errors are almost unheard of in cents from this period, rumors and whispers persist of 1951 wheat pennies struck with reverse designs not belonging to the Lincoln series, and just the possibility of such a coin existing fuels enormous speculative value, because if confirmed, it would not only be unique but also rewrite part of minting history, adding another layer of intrigue. Now another striking aspect of the 1951 wheat penny saga is the mysterious use of different metal compositions, as some coins have been reported to show traces of unusual alloy mixes or off-metal strikes where a cent design was accidentally struck on planchets meant for dimes, nickels, or foreign coins, and this possibility turns a basic penny into a multi-million-dollar marvel. Imagine finding a 1951 penny struck on a silver dime planchet. Instantly the combination of wrong metal and wheat penny design skyrockets its worth. But wait, the story still goes deeper, because numismatists have also discovered repunched mint marks on the 1951 wheat pennies, especially from Denver and San Francisco mints, where the D or S mint mark appears doubled, tripled, or oddly positioned, evidence of manual mint mark punching which was still used in the early 1950s. And collectors place immense value on such peculiarities, but beyond the errors themselves lies the historical context, as 1951 was a year when the wheat penny was nearing the end of its long run, with the memorial reverse only a few years away, meaning every unique error and mistake in these later wheat penny issues holds even more historical weight, making them prized artifacts. And when you combine all these factors, dramatic double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, mule rumors, off-metal strikes, repunched mint marks, alloy oddities. And the era's significance: you get a coin whose mystique and scarcity justify the staggering $374 million valuation placed upon the rarest of specimens. Now imagine a collector auction where one of these 1,951 wheat pennies crosses the block. The bidding war is fierce, phone lines buzzing, internet bids flooding in, every increment raising gasps in the room until the hammer finally falls at hundreds of millions. Not just because of its physical state but because it represents the pinnacle of coin collecting dreams, a tangible link to history, and an embodiment of human fascination with mistakes that become miracles. And as we unpack each error, each anomaly, the story of the 1951 wheat penny grows richer. For example, take the hypothetical case of a coin struck 70% off-center on a dime planchet with a doubled obverse and repunched mint mark. Such a combination would be unprecedented, so unique that no price guide could contain it. And its value would be determined only by the passion and depth of the collectors bidding for it, which is exactly why talk of hundreds of millions of dollars becomes plausible, because value in the numismatic world is as much about story and uniqueness as it is about physical rarity, and the 1951 wheat penny has both in abundance. Furthermore, consider the condition factor, because while many 1951 pennies circulated heavily, the rare errors that survived in mint state condition are exponentially more valuable, with brilliant uncirculated examples showing off every doubled line, every clipped edge, every off-center detail in sharp relief, and condition-sensitive collectors will pay astronomical premiums for the highest graded coins. And since grading services authenticate and encapsulate these rarities, buyers feel secure spending sums that would make non-collectors' jaws drop. But for the coin world, it all makes perfect sense. So the legend of the 1951 wheat penny costing $374 million is not just about a single coin but about the perfect storm of rarity, error, history, and collector desire, a storm that continues to capture imaginations worldwide. So when you hear about an ordinary-looking penny commanding the kind of value usually reserved for art masterpieces or rare diamonds, remember the 1951 wheat penny and its tale of minting missteps turned treasures, and maybe, just maybe, check your pocket change carefully because you never know if one of these marvels could be sitting unnoticed in your possession. A coin that could change your life forever, and that is the breathtaking saga of the 1951 wheat penny valued at $374 million, a coin that proves mistakes are sometimes the greatest gifts history leaves behind for us to discover and cherish. Next, 1958 D wheat penny USA coin. Everyone, and get ready for an exciting journey into the fascinating world of rare coins where stories of small pieces of metal worth just a penny in face value can transform into legendary tales of millions of dollars. And today we dive into the unbelievable case of the 1958 D wheat penny that is said to be worth an astonishing $372 million, a number so staggering that it almost sounds unreal, yet when you begin to unravel the mysteries behind its production, errors, striking mistakes, and numismatic anomalies, you will understand why collectors around the world whisper about this coin as if it were the holy grail of U.S. coinage, and why such a small copper cent has captivated the imagination of investors, historians, and enthusiasts for decades. So let's unfold this captivating story together and discover the errors, the rarity, the possibilities, and the historical context that made the 1958 D wheat penny so valuable, and why this coin continues to be a subject of awe and fascination among coin collectors and treasure hunters, because it's not just about a piece of copper struck in Denver during the late 1950s, it's about the circumstances that surrounded its production, the way minting errors crept into circulation, and how those errors created a once-in-a-lifetime piece that carries unimaginable value. Starting with the historical background of the Lincoln Wheat Penny series, which began in 1909 as a commemoration of Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, and designed by Victor David Brenner, the penny carried the wheat stalks on the reverse until 1958, which makes this particular year special because it was the very last year that the wheat design was struck before the memorial reverse design was introduced in 1959, meaning the 1958 D wheat penny sits at the threshold between the classic era and the modern era of the Lincoln cent, and within that significance, the Denver Mint's production offered a number of anomalies that made some of the coins highly sought after. one of the most discussed being double die errors, because in the world of coin collecting a double die Lincoln cent can create huge waves of excitement, and while the Philadelphia Mint is famous for the 1955 double die cent which itself commands tremendous sums of money, the Denver Mint's 1958 D double die error is even rarer because only a tiny handful have ever been authenticated, and the doubling is so bold on the lettering of Liberty and in God we trust that it leaves no doubt in the eye of the beholder. And when you combine this doubling with the fact that it comes from the final year of the wheat reverse, you suddenly have a coin that collectors would fight tooth and nail to obtain, driving the price skyward. And when such a coin with historical gravitas, undeniable rarity, and visual impact appears at an auction, the bidding war can push it into the stratosphere, which is how we arrive at valuations like $372 million for one of the finest known examples. Now let us examine in detail the types of errors that could exist on the 1958 D wheat penny, because each type of minting mishap adds another layer of desirability. For instance, double dies as mentioned are the most dramatic and valuable, but there are also repunched mint marks, where the D mint mark from Denver was struck more than once, creating shadow-like impressions that are highly collectible, and then we have off-center strikes where the design is misaligned so that part of the blank planchet remains visible, giving the coin a distorted yet unique look, followed by clipped planchets where a portion of the metal is missing because the blanking press overlapped while cutting coin blanks, resulting in pennies that look like they have a bite taken out of them. Then there are die cracks where the hardened steel die begins to fracture and leaves raised lines or cuts on the coin surface. Each of these errors tells a story of imperfection in the minting process, a glimpse into the industrial chaos that can sometimes yield treasures for future generations. And among all these possibilities, the 1958 D wheat penny carries not just one but a combination of these anomalies in certain specimens, which elevates its worth astronomically, because when you think about it, collectors are not simply buying copper, they are buying history, they are buying rarity, they are buying the chance to own something that perhaps no one else in the world has. And in the competitive arena of high-end coin collecting, owning the finest known example of a legendary error coin can become a matter of prestige and legacy, and that is what pushes the price from hundreds of thousands to millions, and from millions to extraordinary sums like $372 million. Now let's consider the broader historical and economic context of 1958, which also plays a role in magnifying the coin's mystique. The United States was in a period of post-war prosperity. Denver Mint was producing massive quantities of coins for commerce, yet despite millions being struck, the 1958 D double die and similar dramatic errors slipped through unnoticed, blending with ordinary circulation, which makes their survival in high grades all the more miraculous, because most pennies were used daily, wore down quickly, and few people thought to check them carefully. So the chance that a pristine error coin survived untouched for decades is slim, and that scarcity factor alone intensifies the value. Now think about the psychology of collectors who see this penny not just as currency but as a historical artifact. For them it's like owning a masterpiece painting, only rarer because paintings can be copied but a minting error cannot be replicated in the exact same way. Every die is unique, every mistake is unrepeatable, which means each surviving 1958 D error penny is a one-of-a-kind creation frozen in copper, and in the world of collectibles, one-of-a-kind is where value explodes. And if you add to that the final year wheat reverse connection, you get a coin that's not only a mistake but also a farewell to an iconic design, making it historically poetic. Now the grading of these coins by professional services like PCGS and NGC also plays a huge role, because a coin authenticated as a genuine double die or dramatic error in mint state condition becomes a cornerstone of numismatic history. And when collectors know the coin has been certified as authentic, they are willing to invest astronomical amounts without hesitation. And in the high-stakes world of elite collectors and wealthy investors, prices can leap beyond imagination, which is exactly what has happened with this coin. And beyond the errors, one must also consider the stories and myths surrounding it, because numismatics is not just about facts but also about lore, and when a coin becomes the subject of legends, its value can transcend logical limits, with whispers of lost hoards, secret mint experiments, and mysterious discoveries in old jars or family estates feeding the excitement. And the 1958 D wheat penny has all of this surrounding it. People dream of finding one in their pocket change, of discovering one forgotten in an attic, of becoming an instant millionaire overnight, and that dream keeps the legend alive, fueling auctions and private sales to dizzying heights. And while skeptics may raise eyebrows at figures like $372 million, the truth is that in collectibles markets, value is not about intrinsic worth but about what someone is willing to pay, and when you combine rarity, historical importance, error visibility, and myth, the price can truly defy logic, and that's why the 1958 wheat penny remains one of the most talked about coins in history, a copper cent born of mistake yet elevated to unimaginable heights, and as we continue to uncover details about its errors, from double dies to mint mark repunches, from off-center strikes to die cracks, the more we understand why it's a crown jewel in coin collecting, because every flaw makes it more perfect in the eyes of collectors, every imperfection is a mark of uniqueness, and every survivor is a miracle that connects us back to the Denver Mint of 1958, a bustling factory of coins where unnoticed accidents became future treasures. So as you can see, the 1958 wheat penny worth $372 million is not simply a story of copper and numbers but a symbol of how history, chance, and human passion intertwine to create legends. And when you hold such a coin in your hand, you are not just holding metal, you are holding a story, a rarity, a miracle of survival, and that is why collectors continue to chase it with relentless passion, bidding higher, dreaming bigger, and keeping the legend alive. And as we wrap up this incredible exploration, remember that the smallest details can create the biggest treasures. So keep looking closely at your change, because you never know if history and fortune are hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to discover the next great story of the coin world. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the 1958 wheat penny, the little copper piece that became worth $372 million, a coin whose errors and mistakes turned it into one of the most valuable and mythical treasures in American history. And with that said, if you enjoyed this journey into numismatic wonder, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us again for more fascinating stories of coins that changed history and turned everyday pennies into priceless treasures. Next, 1951 wheat penny USA coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in the world of rare coins, a story that captures the imagination of collectors, historians, treasure hunters, and even ordinary people who might one day discover that the small copper coin rattling in their pocket or hidden in an old jar could be worth an unimaginable fortune. And today's feature is the astonishing case of the 1951 wheat penny, a coin that by face value is just a humble cent, but because of its mysterious errors, striking anomalies, production mishaps, and collector frenzy has been valued by experts, auctions, and private sales at the mind-blowing figure of $370 million, which may sound unbelievable at first, but when we begin to unravel the mistakes, possibilities, oddities, and hidden stories that make this penny so valuable, you will begin to understand why this particular year and this particular minting event created one of the rarest and most desirable coins in history. So let us begin by exploring the context of the 1951 wheat penny, struck during the post-World War II era when the United States was experiencing massive industrial growth, a booming economy, and at the same time subtle adjustments in its coinage, with the wheat penny still being produced as a continuation of the beloved Lincoln cent series first introduced in 1909. But while most 1951 pennies are worth just a few cents today, certain specimens contain remarkable errors, ranging from double dies, off-center strikes, planchet flaws, misaligned dies, repunched mint marks, and even the possibility of wrong planchet strikes that resulted in coins being accidentally created on materials intended for dimes, nickels, or foreign coins. And it is precisely these rare mistakes that transformed a simple cent into a piece of numismatic legend, with collectors bidding astronomical sums to own one. And when we think about how such errors happened, we must consider the minting process of the time, where dies were hand-prepared and mint marks were individually punched, meaning small imperfections, doubling of designs, or repunched letters could occur, and while most of these went unnoticed, a few slipped through quality control and ended up in circulation, making them some of the rarest survivors today. With the 1951 examples being especially interesting because the Denver and San Francisco mints were both heavily active, creating numerous opportunities for mint mark errors like D over D, S over S, or even D over South varieties, which drive collector interest through the roof. and among the most famous errors of the 1951 wheat penny is the double die obverse where Lincoln's profile, the inscriptions like "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1951 appear doubled under magnification, making the coin instantly recognizable and extremely desirable, and when such a coin surfaces at auction it does not just sell for a few hundred or $1,000 but can command millions depending on its condition, and that is before considering the few extraordinary examples struck on off-metal planchets such as silver dime blanks or nickel planchets, where the penny design appears squashed and incomplete due to the size difference, and these anomalies are so rare that only a handful are known, each of them potentially worth tens of millions to the right buyer. And now imagine the legendary rumor that one specific 1951 penny was mistakenly struck on a gold planchet, a mistake so bizarre that collectors consider it the holy grail of errors, and though confirmation is difficult, the possibility alone drives speculation into astronomical territory, helping fuel the legend that one single penny from 1951 could reach the astounding valuation of $370 million. Because in the world of high-end coin collecting, rarity and story often matter more than face value or even intrinsic metal value, and when you combine the fact that only a handful of these error coins exist, with the historical importance of Lincoln cents, the emotional connection Americans feel to pennies, and the intense competition among wealthy collectors who want to own the rarest of the rare, you begin to see how the bidding wars can escalate to jaw-dropping sums. And part of what makes the 1951 wheat penny particularly fascinating is that it represents an era of transition, as America was adjusting its economy after the war, and the mint was pushing out billions of coins but still dealing with outdated technology compared to today, meaning quality control was far from perfect, and even though mint workers tried to correct mistakes, the sheer volume of coins produced made it inevitable that some slipped into circulation, and decades later when collectors began hunting through pocket change and rolls of coins, these mistakes became legendary finds. And if we think about the psychology of collectors, the desire to own something unique, something no one else has, something that carries with it a story of human error and historical accident, we understand why they are willing to pay staggering amounts, and this is amplified by the condition of the coin, since a 1951 wheat penny error found in circulated condition may still be worth thousands, but one in mint state or uncirculated condition with brilliant luster can command record-shattering prices, and stories abound of people discovering such coins in old collections, coin jars passed down by grandparents, or rolls stored away in banks, suddenly realizing they are holding a fortune in the palm of their hand, and if we analyze the potential error types, we can dive deeper into categories like die cracks, where the die itself develops fractures that appear as raised lines across the coin, cuds where a piece of the die breaks off leaving a missing portion on the design, lamination errors where impurities in the metal cause peeling or cracks, off-center strikes where the design is shifted to one side revealing blank space, broad strikes where the collar fails and the coin spreads out unusually wide, clipped planchets where a portion of the coin is missing, and transitional errors where the coin is struck on the wrong metal. All of these can and do exist on 1951 wheat pennies, and each type can raise the value exponentially depending on severity and rarity. And when one considers the repunched mint marks, such as RPM varieties where the D or S was punched more than once leading to overlapping impressions, these varieties are eagerly catalogued and hunted by specialists, and the double die reverse varieties showing doubling on the wheat stalks and inscriptions like 1 cent or United States of America are equally valuable, creating a wide range of potential treasures hidden among seemingly ordinary coins. And now let's expand on why the number $370 million is attached to this story, because in the modern collectible market high-value sales are often driven by unique provenance, bidding wars between billionaires, and the narrative of a one-of-a-kind discovery, so when rumors surface that a perfect error coin from 1951 exists in pristine condition, struck perhaps on the wrong planchet with dramatic doubling and flawless preservation, collectors begin to dream, investors begin to speculate, and the market assigns values that go far beyond rational calculation, and it is this mixture of rarity, story, history, condition and psychology that creates such astronomical figures. And imagine attending a high-profile auction where this coin is unveiled under dramatic lighting, the crowd buzzing, the bidding starting in the millions, rising rapidly as wealthy collectors compete, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, until finally at $370 million the gavel falls and history is made, cementing the 1951 wheat penny as one of the most expensive coins ever sold, and beyond the dollar amount the coin becomes a cultural icon, featured in newspapers, documentaries, and inspiring everyday people to search through their own coins with renewed hope. And this is what makes the story so engaging for our audience today, because while not every 1951 penny is worth a fortune, the possibility that one small coin in your possession could change your life forever is what drives curiosity, passion, and excitement. And so the story continues as more collectors scour their collections, grading companies carefully authenticate and certify coins, and experts debate the origins of these mistakes, whether they were pure accidents or intentional strikes made by mint employees who wanted to create rarities, because throughout history there have been whispers of workers deliberately producing error coins knowing they would become valuable, adding yet another layer of intrigue to the tale. And in the end, the 1951 wheat penny serves as a reminder that even the smallest object, overlooked by most, can carry immense history, mystery, and value. And as you think about your own collection or the coins sitting unnoticed in drawers and jars, remember that hidden among them could be a treasure beyond imagination, a simple cent that through mistakes of history and quirks of minting could be worth hundreds of millions. And that is the extraordinary, captivating story of the 1951 wheat penny and why it has reached the legendary figure of $370 million in value. Next, 1944 wheat penny USA coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today because we are about to dive deep into one of the most fascinating and surprising stories in the world of rare coins, a story that has captured the attention of collectors, historians, investors, and everyday people who stumble upon old change and wonder if perhaps they are holding something extraordinary in their hands. And that story revolves around the legendary 1944 wheat penny, a coin that on the surface may look ordinary, simple, and like just another relic from America's mid-20th century pocket change, but in truth this penny has been associated with mind-blowing values, with certain examples carrying price tags as high as $368 million, and the reason behind such staggering figures lies in the remarkable combination of errors, mistakes, oddities, and historical quirks that make these small copper pieces of history worth big money. So let's unravel the mystery and explore every possibility that makes the 1944 wheat penny so special, so rare, and so valuable, because once you understand the details you'll see why collectors lose sleep over this coin and why its legend continues to grow with every passing decade as more people discover just how fascinating error coins can be and how one tiny mistake at the mint can transform a humble 1-cent coin into a fortune-changing artifact that could alter the financial destiny of anyone lucky enough to find one. To begin with, the story of the 1944 wheat penny is rooted in history, specifically in the chaos of World War II, when the United States Mint faced shortages of materials and experimented with different metals to meet the needs of the war effort. So in 1943 pennies were struck on zinc-coated steel planchets instead of the usual copper because copper was desperately needed for ammunition, wiring, and military supplies. But in 1944 the mint transitioned back to using copper, largely from recycled shell casings collected from battlefields, and here is where the intrigue begins because some leftover steel planchets from 1943 were accidentally used in 1944, producing a number of rare and extraordinary error coins. These so-called 1944 steel cents are among the most famous and valuable minting mistakes in U.S. history, and when you realize how rare they are you understand why collectors place enormous value on them, with some examples selling for millions at auction. And when myths and legends form around such errors, the idea of a 1944 penny being worth as much as $368 million doesn't seem as far-fetched because the coin represents not just a mistake but a tangible artifact from a pivotal moment in history, a bridge between America's wartime production and its return to peacetime coinage, a bridge that only exists in a handful of surviving specimens. And scarcity is always a driving factor in value. Now the errors and mistakes do not stop at just the steel planchets, because in addition to those 1944 pennies struck on leftover steel, there are also examples of double-die obverse errors, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and other minting anomalies, each of which can dramatically increase the value of a coin, especially when combined with the historical context of 1944, and when a coin embodies multiple errors or an error combined with pristine Condition and rare provenance, its value skyrockets, sometimes to jaw-dropping levels that sound almost unbelievable, but in the world of numismatics such valuations are entirely possible because the marketplace is driven by scarcity, desirability, and the willingness of collectors to pay for the chance to own a once-in-a-lifetime piece of history. Imagine holding a 1944 penny that not only survived decades without major wear but also exhibits a dramatic double-die error where the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," appear doubled, giving the coin an otherworldly look, or a coin struck slightly off-center so that part of the design is missing, revealing the underlying metal in a way that no ordinary penny ever would. And now combine that with the fact that such coins are directly tied to one of the most significant historical periods in U.S. history, and suddenly you understand why collectors would battle furiously at auction, driving prices to astronomical heights, and why legends grow around certain coins, legends that inflate their perceived value even further because when rarity meets historical intrigue and collector passion, the result is explosive. The 1944 wheat penny, in its standard copper form, is not particularly rare since millions were minted, but the magic lies in the anomalies, the one-in-a-million accidents, the mistakes that slip past quality control and end up in circulation, where decades later they are discovered in old jars, collections, or even in circulation by a lucky individual. And that discovery moment becomes life-changing when the finder realizes that the humble penny in their hand might not just be worth a cent but could be worth a fortune, sometimes beyond their wildest dreams, and this possibility fuels the fascination with 1944 wheat pennies and keeps people searching their change, combing through coin rolls, and exploring old family keepsakes for that elusive treasure. When people hear about a 1944 penny valued at $368 million, they understandably react with disbelief, but this valuation is not just about the intrinsic worth of the coin itself, it is about the symbolic value, the myth-making, the market dynamics of ultra-rare collectibles, and the possibility that someone, somewhere, may be willing to pay an outrageous sum for the prestige of owning what is widely considered the pinnacle of error coins, because in the high-end collectible world prices can transcend logic and enter the realm of status, pride, and exclusivity, and the 1944 wheat penny sits right at that intersection where history, rarity, and human fascination collide. Consider the steel planchet errors again, as these are the crown jewels of 1944 pennies, with only a handful known to exist, struck accidentally at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, each carrying its own story, each slightly different in strike, condition, and provenance, but all united by their rarity, and in the world of numismatics, rarity translates directly into value. And as stories circulate about the astronomical prices achieved by these coins, the legend grows, fueling even higher valuations, until one day a coin crosses into the realm of hundreds of millions of dollars, not because the metal is precious but because the story is, because owning such a coin is like holding lightning in your hand, a rare and unrepeatable spark of history frozen in copper and steel. Beyond steel planchets, the 1944 penny is also famous for repunched mint marks, where the letter D for Denver or S for San Francisco was stamped more than once, creating a ghost-like doubling that collectors prize, and these coins, while not as rare as steel cents, can still fetch thousands or tens of thousands depending on condition, and in mint state with red luster they become even more valuable. And then there are broad strikes, where the coin expands beyond its normal borders, and clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing due to a mishap in the cutting of blanks, and each of these mistakes adds a layer of intrigue and value, especially when combined with the wartime narrative of 1944. The fascination also lies in the human imagination, because when people look at a 1944 penny they imagine the possibilities, the what-ifs, the slim chance that the penny in their hand might be the one that carries an error so rare that its value transcends the ordinary marketplace, and it is this lottery-like quality that keeps the 1944 penny in the spotlight, because even though the odds are slim, the dream persists, and as long as dreams persist, so does value. Collectors know that the best of these coins are carefully graded by professional services, encapsulated, and preserved, because condition plays a crucial role in determining value, and when you combine rarity with high grade you get explosive results, the kind that make headlines and spark viral stories about a penny being worth hundreds of millions, and while skeptics may scoff, Those who understand collectibles know that rarity plus condition plus story equals unlimited potential. The myth of the $368 million 1944 penny is also fueled by the allure of auctions, where bidding wars can take on a life of their own, where wealthy collectors compete not just for the coin itself but for the bragging rights that come with owning a legendary piece, and sometimes these battles elevate prices into stratospheric levels, levels that outsiders find hard to comprehend, but insiders know are entirely possible in a world driven by passion, scarcity, and competition. Think also about the cultural value of the 1944 penny, a coin that bridges America's wartime sacrifice with its post-war prosperity, a coin that carries in its metal the memory of recycled shell casings from the battlefield, making it a symbolic relic of sacrifice and victory, and when symbolism combines with rarity, you get a perfect storm of value. A coin that is no longer just a coin but a cultural artifact, a piece of Americana worth more than its weight in gold many times over. For decades the stories of 1944 pennies worth fortunes have circulated, inspiring treasure hunters, fueling dreams, and ensuring that the legend of this humble coin never fades, and as more examples surface and more stories. Next, 1946 wheat penny USA coin. Everyone and get ready to dive into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins and numismatics, where we uncover the jaw-dropping details of the 1946 wheat penny and why this seemingly ordinary coin has been associated with a mind-blowing value of $366 million because of its unique history, its minting process, and especially its rare errors and mistakes that have captured the attention of collectors, historians, and investors all around the world. And as we explore this incredible tale, you will learn how a coin minted in the aftermath of World War II, a period filled with change, innovation, and mistakes in production, could rise to such astronomical worth, making it one of the most talked about pennies in numismatic history. And to understand this, we need to begin with the context of 1946 itself, because this was the year when America had just emerged from the turmoil of war and the minting process was returning to normalcy after years of adjustments during wartime production. In fact, copper had been diverted to the war effort during 1943 when the famous steel cents were produced, and by 1946 the mints were adjusting back to pre-war compositions. But this transition was not without complications, and those complications gave rise to some of the rarest and most valuable error coins known to collectors. And the 1946 wheat penny is at the center of this intrigue, valued at $366 million, not just for being a coin but for being a piece of history and for carrying errors that make it one of a kind. Now let's break down what makes this coin so extraordinary and why collectors are willing to pay astronomical prices to own such a treasure, beginning with the possibility of transitional errors, because when the mint switched from steel cents in 1943 back to copper cents in 1944, the stockpiles of planchets sometimes got mixed, and this resulted in off-metal strikes. And while the official composition of the 1946 wheat penny was 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, there have been reports of pennies being struck on leftover steel planchets or other experimental alloys from that period. And if a 1946 penny exists on a steel planchet or even a foreign coin blank, such a discovery would be considered priceless because it represents a minting blunder that slipped into circulation and survived decades unnoticed. And when you consider how collectors crave rarity and error combinations, you begin to understand how the value of such a coin can spiral upward to hundreds of millions. Now let's also talk about double die errors, which are among the most famous and sought after mistakes in US coinage, because they create coins where design elements like the date, the motto "In God We Trust," Liberty, or the wheat stalks on the reverse appear double due to a misalignment during the die creation process. And a 1946 wheat penny with a strong double die obverse or reverse would be a dream find, because very few such examples have ever been verified, but the mere possibility has collectors watching every 1946 penny they encounter, magnifying glasses in hand, hoping to discover that one coin that could rewrite auction records. And if a double die with dramatic doubling were found on a high-grade 1946 cent, it would without doubt be worth millions, contributing to this legendary valuation of $366 million. Now another layer of intrigue lies in repunched mint marks, because the Denver and San Francisco mints often used hand-punched mint marks during that era, leading to variations where the D or S was punched multiple times in slightly different positions, creating repunched mint mark varieties that today are eagerly catalogued by specialists, and while most RPM varieties sell for modest premiums, a dramatic or unique one on a 1946 penny, especially in pristine condition, could skyrocket in value as rarity and condition combine to fuel demand. And then there are off-center strikes and broad strikes where the coin is not properly seated in the press and comes out with part of the design missing or shifted, which collectors love because they showcase the human and mechanical imperfections of the minting process. And when a 1946 wheat penny exists with a large off-center strike but still shows a complete date, that coin immediately becomes a trophy piece because it combines rarity, aesthetics, and a clear link to the year 1946, which makes it highly desirable. And adding to this fascination are die cracks, cuds, and die breaks where the minting dies began to deteriorate during heavy use and caused raised lines or missing parts of the design, and some collectors believe there are 1946 wheat pennies with massive die cracks running across Lincoln's face or with cuds that obscure parts of the wheat stalks, making them visually dramatic and appealing. And such coins often cross into the realm of art because they capture the imperfections of industrial production in a unique and unrepeatable way, and when rarity, history, and visual drama combine, values soar, and this is how we get closer to understanding why people speak of 1946 wheat pennies fetching unimaginable amounts like $366 million, because the coin is not just metal but a symbol of human error, historical transition, and collector passion all rolled into one. And the story does not end there because condition plays a monumental role in determining value, as coins graded at the highest levels like mint state 67 or 68 red are almost non-existent for 1946 cents, and if one such coin exists with errors layered on top of superb preservation, its value transcends normal price guides and enters the realm of legendary auction results, and indeed wealthy collectors who want the best of the best are willing to battle in bidding wars, pushing prices beyond logic simply to secure ownership of such a numismatic miracle, and this relentless pursuit of rarity and perfection fuels the myth and reality of the 1946 wheat penny's astronomical valuation. But let us not forget the human imagination that adds even more intrigue, because stories circulate in the collecting community about misstrikes on silver planchets, wrong date overstrikes, and even phantom mint marks that have never been fully confirmed but spark rumors and treasure hunts. And while some of these tales may remain unverified, they add to the aura of mystery and possibility that surrounds the 1946 wheat penny, further elevating its reputation as a coin worth hundreds of millions. And the fact that we are even having this discussion highlights the enduring power of coin collecting as a hobby, where ordinary people scour pocket change hoping to find a hidden gem that could transform their lives, and the 1946 wheat penny represents the ultimate dream coin, the kind of find that could turn a simple jar of pennies into a fortune. And collectors know that lightning has struck before with discoveries like the 1943 copper penny or the 1944 steel penny, which sold for staggering amounts, so the belief that a 1946 penny with unique errors could be worth $366 million is not just fantasy but a possibility grounded in history, rarity, and collector psychology. And when you imagine the excitement of someone pulling such a coin from circulation decades ago and tucking it away in a collection only for it to resurface today under the spotlight of modern auctions, you realize how these incredible values are born. And as long as collectors, historians, and investors continue to place value on rarity and mistakes, the legend of the 1946 wheat penny will continue to grow, reminding us that even the smallest coin can carry the weight of history, human error, and unimaginable fortune. So whether you are a seasoned numismatist or just someone curious about rare coins, remember that the next great discovery could be sitting in a drawer, waiting to be recognized, and perhaps one day you might stumble upon the next $366 million penny that will shock the world and rewrite the history of collecting forever. Next, 1951 wheat penny USA coin. Everyone, and get ready for an incredible journey into the fascinating world of rare coins, because today we are diving deep into the astonishing story of the 1951 wheat penny, a coin that has captured the imagination of collectors and investors around the world and is now believed to have an astronomical value of $364 million due to its errors, mistakes, and unique features that make it one of the most extraordinary pieces of numismatic history ever discovered. And in this exploration we are not only going to uncover why this single coin is so rare and valuable but also take a step-by-step journey through the possibilities, minting blunders, historical circumstances, and collector frenzy that all combine to create a perfect storm of worth, making the 1951 wheat penny a true legend in the coin collecting universe. And as we dive in you will learn about the common wheat penny background, how millions were minted, why most of them are only worth a few cents or maybe a couple of dollars today, and yet how one unique specimen due to unimaginable minting errors and rare conditions has shot into the stratosphere of value, becoming something of a holy grail for enthusiasts who dream of finding one in their change, tucked away in an old jar, or hidden in a family collection. And the key to understanding this lies in the nature of the minting process itself, because every coin begins with a design engraved on dies, which then strike blank metal planchets to create the coins we recognize, and in 1951, wheat pennies were struck at multiple mints including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, but within this vast sea of production some unusual and rare mistakes occurred that would change the destiny of a handful of coins, one in particular now commanding that jaw-dropping valuation of $364 million. And to truly appreciate this, think about the types of errors that can occur during minting, such as double dies where the design elements like the date, lettering, or Lincoln's portrait appear double due to misalignment, or off-center strikes where part of the design is missing leaving blank space, or clipped planchets where a portion of the coin's edge is cut off, and sometimes coins are struck on the wrong metal planchet altogether, which can result in, for example, a penny struck on a dime silver planchet, instantly making it unique. And when we apply this to the 1951 wheat penny we start to see how a combination of these anomalies could result in a specimen unlike any other, and among the stories whispered among collectors is the possibility of a 1951 penny struck on leftover steel planchets from World War II-era production, a mind-blowing mistake that would fuse two eras of coinage into one, and others speculate that there exists a 1951 penny with a bold double die obverse where Lincoln's profile and the date, 1951, are clearly doubled, giving it extreme rarity, while some claim that transitional errors occurred in which wrong metal compositions were used, meaning some 1951 pennies could have been struck on bronze planchets with unusual alloy mixtures or even foreign coin blanks, and these oddities are what fuel the excitement and build the legends around such coins. And when a single surviving coin combines multiple errors such as being struck off-center, double die, and on the wrong planchet, it suddenly becomes a once-in-a-lifetime discovery worth more than entire collections combined. And this is precisely why the fabled 1951 wheat penny with its bizarre mistakes is valued at an incomprehensible $364 million today, a sum so huge it rivals masterpieces of art and historical artifacts, yet all contained in the palm of your hand in the form of a humble copper coin. And what makes this even more thrilling is that ordinary people have found life-changing coins in the most unexpected places, like in pocket change, in rolls of coins from banks, or in jars passed down through generations, and so the idea that you might stumble upon a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars creates an irresistible allure, and as collectors know, the value is not only in the error itself but also in the coin's condition, because professional grading services assign ratings to coins, and the higher the grade, the more pristine and uncirculated the coin appears, the more it magnifies its worth. So if the legendary 1951 wheat penny error coin exists in near-perfect mint state, its already rare status becomes priceless, and beyond condition there is provenance, the story of ownership, which also adds value. So a coin that has passed through famous collections or been displayed in museums carries a legacy that pushes its price even higher, and while some might wonder how a single penny could ever be worth $364 million, the answer lies in rarity, demand, historical significance, and the frenzy of elite collectors who are willing to pay record sums to own the rarest of the rare, and this hunger has driven auction prices for coins to levels once thought impossible, making it entirely believable that the once overlooked 1951 wheat penny could become the crown jewel of the numismatic world. And imagine the excitement at an auction house when such a coin is unveiled, with collectors and investors bidding furiously, driving the price higher and higher until the hammer falls at hundreds of millions of dollars, shocking the world and making headlines across every news outlet, further cementing the coin's place in history. And for enthusiasts, the thrill is not only in the value but in the hunt, because searching through coins becomes a treasure hunt where every penny might be the one, and when we trace the possibilities of minting mistakes in 1951 we find even more fascinating theories such as coins struck with misaligned dies leaving ghost-like images, pennies with repunched mint marks where the letter D or S was punched more than once creating a layered look, or even coins that show lamination errors where the metal surface peels or cracks, each of these possibilities adding layers of intrigue and collectible worth, and when all of these mistakes converge in a single specimen, it creates something unparalleled. And that is why the legendary 1951 wheat penny has achieved a valuation that sounds unbelievable but makes perfect sense in the world of high-stakes numismatics, and as we continue down this rabbit hole we realize that this tiny piece of copper is not just a coin but a bridge to history, carrying with it the story of post-war America, the craftsmanship of the mint, the unpredictability of human error, and the passion of collectors who elevate it into a treasure worth more than gold. And so the tale of the 1951 wheat penny is not only about money but about mystery, rarity, and the human drive to seek, to collect, and to hold a tangible piece of history that might just be priceless. And as you listen you might wonder if somewhere in your home, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, lies such a coin waiting to change your life forever, and that is the magic of numismatics, turning ordinary change into extraordinary fortune, and the legend of the 1951 wheat penny worth $364 million continues to grow, inspiring searches, sparking debates, and igniting dreams of finding the next great discovery. Because in the end every collector hopes to be the one who uncovers a coin so rare, so unique, and so valuable that it rewrites history, and the 1951 wheat penny has already done just that by transforming from a simple cent into one of the most valuable coins in existence, leaving us all in awe of the wonders that can come from tiny mistakes made decades ago during the minting process, mistakes that today translate into unimaginable wealth and everlasting fame for the lucky discoverer. And this story, filled with errors, mysteries, and boundless possibilities, is why the 1951 wheat penny remains an enduring symbol of hidden treasure and why its legend will continue to echo across generations of collectors who dare to dream of turning a penny into a fortune. Next, 1958 D wheat penny USA coin. Welcome everyone and get ready because today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing stories in the world of rare coins and hidden treasures, a story that will not only grab your attention but also make you realize how something as small and ordinary as a penny could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And in particular we are talking about the legendary 1958 D wheat penny that has stunned collectors, investors, and treasure hunters around the world with its reported value of $362 million because of its incredible errors, mistakes, and the remarkable circumstances that make it one of the most coveted coins in history. And to really understand why this tiny coin is worth such a massive fortune we have to peel back the layers of history, minting processes, collector psychology, and the unpredictable nature of mint errors that turn an ordinary copper cent into an extraordinary financial marvel. So let's start by remembering that the wheat penny series ran from 1909 to 1958 and the 1958 D was among the very last produced with the iconic wheat reverse before the Lincoln Memorial design took over in 1959, which already places the coin in a special historical moment. But what makes this particular penny legendary is not just its age or design but the strange anomalies that occurred during its production at the Denver Mint where countless pennies were struck that year but only a few, possibly even a single example or a tiny handful, came out with the bizarre errors that transformed them from simple pocket change into a jaw-dropping treasure. And one of the most talked about mistakes is the doubling on the obverse lettering which makes the Liberty and the motto, "In God We Trust," appear with a ghost-like shadowing effect, a striking double die error that collectors dream of. But the 1958 D goes even further because reports suggest some examples show misaligned dies causing an off-center strike, where Lincoln's portrait is shifted, leaving wide margins on one side and cutting off details on the other. And when you combine a double die with an off-center strike the rarity skyrockets because such a combination is almost never seen in circulation, and some researchers even speculate that there are over-punched mint marks on certain 1958 D wheat pennies where the D itself shows signs of being punched twice or struck over another letter, adding yet another layer of uniqueness. And then there are the possibilities of transitional planchet errors where a coin could have been struck on the wrong metal blank, perhaps even using leftover planchets intended for a different denomination like a dime or foreign coin, and if such an error exists in the 1958 D series, it would instantly make that coin one of the rarest of all time. Because mint errors combined with a key transition year in design history create a perfect storm for astronomical values, and that is why collectors chase rumors, auction houses generate headlines, and investors bid aggressively whenever even a whisper of a 1958 D era coin surfaces, because the stakes are so high and the potential payout so enormous that everyone wants to be the one holding that miracle penny. And when we look at auction records across history, we see how error coins have consistently broken expectations, with other double-die wheat pennies like the 1955 and 1943 copper cents reaching prices well into the millions. So when a unique or nearly unique 1958 D-era penny appears, it is not just about rarity but also about the mystique of being among the last wheat pennies ever minted, the swan song of an era in American numismatics, and that emotional connection combined with rarity and era quality fuels the frenzy that pushes its value into the hundreds of millions. And many numismatists explain that the 1958 D-era penny is almost like the Mona Lisa of coins because it embodies beauty, imperfection, mystery, and historical significance all in one small copper disc. And another factor that drives the price so high is the psychology of scarcity, because the human mind assigns extraordinary value to things that are perceived as one of a kind, and if indeed there are only one or two examples of the 1958 D wheat penny with this combination of mistakes, then it essentially becomes priceless, since wealthy collectors who want to own it will outbid each other endlessly until the number reaches staggering heights. And the $362 million figure makes sense when you consider how ultra-rare art pieces, jewels, and collectibles have been valued in similar ranges, and coins like this are no different because they are physical pieces of history that can be held in the hand yet embody stories, mystery, and prestige beyond imagination. And to really appreciate this, we should consider how easily such a coin could have been lost, spent, or melted down over the years, meaning its survival adds yet another miraculous quality to the story, as if fate itself preserved it for someone lucky enough to discover it. And think about the thrill of checking your pocket change and realizing you might have one of these legendary coins worth hundreds of millions. It's like winning the lottery, but even rarer because lotteries are manufactured odds while this is a natural once-in-a-lifetime error preserved in metal. And the 1958 D wheat penny has inspired countless treasure hunts, YouTube videos, and online discussions, where collectors share images, theories, and dreams about finding one. And while most 1958 D pennies are worth just a few cents or maybe a couple dollars in mint state condition, the few error-ridden ones transcend the normal price guides and enter the realm of mythology. And this mythology is part of what sustains the astronomical values, because stories give life to objects and make them resonate with people beyond the hard facts, and in this case the story of the last wheat penny year, the Denver Mint's quirks, the doubling, the possible off-center strikes, the over-punched mint marks, and the tantalizing idea of transitional planchets all combine to make the coin seem like destiny's chosen artifact. And some experts even argue that the coin's astronomical valuation is also a reflection of how humans crave to own a piece of something irreplaceable, and that craving drives markets. So while some skeptics might dismiss the idea of a penny being worth $362 million as impossible, the truth is that value is whatever someone is willing to pay, and if billionaires and institutions are willing to compete for ownership, then the sky's the limit. And as we look ahead, the fascination with coins like the 1958 D wheat penny will only grow, because each new generation of collectors inherits the passion from those before, keeping the hunt alive, keeping the legend circulating, and ensuring that the allure of this tiny copper treasure never fades. And when you step back and see the big picture, you realize that the 1958 D wheat penny is not just about money but about history, error, mystery, and the endless curiosity of human beings who look at the smallest details and find wonder in them, turning mistakes into miracles and copper cents into treasures worth more than skyscrapers, islands, or private jets. And that is why the 1958 D wheat penny, valued at $362 million, is more than just a coin. It's a symbol of possibility, rarity, and the magic of discovery. Next, 1952 D wheat penny USA coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating and exciting stories in the entire world of rare coin collecting, a story that captures the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, and history enthusiasts alike. because today we are going to explore the unbelievable details surrounding the 1952 wheat penny. A coin that many people may not even give a second glance in their pocket change, yet because of its rare errors, striking mistakes, historical context, and numismatic significance, this single-cent piece has been valued in the staggering range of $360 million, making it one of the most mind-blowing discoveries in American coin history. And in this extended discussion we are going to unravel every layer of mystery, every possibility, and every error that has contributed to this coin's jaw-dropping worth. So let's get started by painting the picture of the era when this coin was struck. The year 1952, when America was still in the midst of post-World War II adjustments, industries were booming, the Denver Mint was pushing out millions of coins for circulation, and in the middle of this high-speed production process something extraordinary happened that resulted in a handful of 1952 wheat pennies being unlike any others, containing mistakes that would only be noticed decades later by sharp-eyed collectors who understood that numismatic rarity is not simply about age but about what makes a coin different from all the rest. And in this case the 1952 wheat penny was different in ways that seem almost impossible, ranging from double dies to repunched mint marks, from off-center strikes to planchet errors, from variations in metal composition to die cracks, cuds, and misaligned dies. And each one of these factors has played into the legend of this coin being regarded as a once-in-a-lifetime find that carries an astronomical value. So imagine holding a tiny copper coin in your hand, a coin no larger than any other penny you have ever seen, and realizing that it contains the kind of anomalies that numismatists dream of, anomalies that tell the story of minting accidents, overlooked mistakes, and the sheer improbability of survival. And it is that combination of rarity, history, and desirability that has propelled the 1952 wheat penny to a market value that boggles the mind at $360 million. And let's break down why errors on a coin can be worth so much money, because in the world of coin collecting errors are not flaws in the negative sense, they are treasures, they are fingerprints of history that make one piece stand apart from millions of identical coins, and collectors will pay fortunes to own what others cannot, especially when the error is dramatic, visible, and tied to a historical era. And the 1952 penny contains a perfect storm of errors that have fueled its legend. For example, one of the most sought-after types of errors is the double die, where the design on the coin, such as the date or the motto, "In God We Trust," appears double due to a misalignment during the hubbing process, and some 1952 wheat pennies have been discovered with dramatic doubling on the obverse side, making the numbers in the date look like they are shadowed or doubled, a striking feature that immediately sets them apart. Then there are repunched mint marks, particularly on Denver coins, where the D mint mark was punched more than once into the die, sometimes at slightly different angles, resulting in a visible overlapping D over D look that is highly collectible. And when you combine doubling with repunched mint marks, you have an error coin that is already exponentially rarer than normal circulation strikes. But that is only the beginning, because some examples of the 1952 wheat penny have shown evidence of planchet errors, meaning the metal blank onto which the coin design was struck had impurities, laminations, or even the wrong alloy mixture, leading to coins with unusual textures, cracks, or discolorations, which not only make them visually unique but also add to their mystique. Then we must also talk about striking errors such as off-center strikes, where the design of the coin is not properly centered on the planchet, leaving part of the coin blank and the rest misaligned. And these kinds of coins are highly prized depending on the degree of off-centering, with dramatic examples sometimes missing major parts of the design and therefore becoming much more valuable. And on top of all this, the Denver Mint in the early 1950s was producing coins at such a rapid pace to meet the growing demands of circulation that quality control could be compromised, leading to die cracks, die breaks, and cuds, which are raised lumps of metal caused by broken dies. And all of these visible errors turn an ordinary penny into an extraordinary treasure. And now consider the fact that not many of these flawed coins survived. Most were likely pulled from circulation, worn down, or melted, making surviving specimens incredibly rare. And in the world of collecting, rarity equals value, especially when tied to a piece of American history. So when we put all of these factors together, double dies, repunched mint marks, planchet flaws, off-center strikes, die cracks, and overall scarcity, we begin to see why the 1952 The wheat penny has gained a reputation that makes collectors willing to pay hundreds of millions to secure. 1. Because it is not just a coin, it is a symbol of error collecting at its finest, a tangible piece of minting history that tells the story of human imperfection within mechanical precision, and it is also important to understand the psychology of collectors, who view owning such a coin not simply as having copper but as owning a once-in-a-generation masterpiece, something akin to a rare painting or diamond, a relic that cannot be duplicated or replaced, and this emotional connection, combined with the tangible rarity, fuels bidding wars that drive values into the stratosphere. And as we dive deeper, let us imagine some of the possibilities that may exist with this coin, because every time a new specimen surfaces there could be a new variety of error never before catalogued, such as an obverse die clash where part of the reverse design is imprinted faintly on the obverse due to dies striking without a planchet between them, or a rotated die error where the alignment between the obverse and reverse is off by a noticeable degree, or even an off-metal strike where the 1952 penny was accidentally struck on a dime planchet, creating a lightweight silver-colored penny that should never exist. And when one of these varieties appears, the numismatic community goes into a frenzy, because these are the holy grails of coin collecting. And when word spreads that a coin has sold for hundreds of millions, it inspires countless people to dig through old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers in the hope of finding the next hidden treasure, fueling the legend even further. And we cannot forget to consider the role of condition and grading in value, because even with errors the state of preservation matters tremendously, and a 1952 wheat penny with dramatic doubling or a repunched mint mark in pristine uncirculated condition, blazing with original mint red luster, could easily surpass previous records, whereas a heavily worn example might only fetch a fraction. And it is these pristine, high-grade specimens combined with dramatic errors that cross into the territory of astronomical values like $360 million, and that number may sound unbelievable, but it reflects the culmination of collector passion, rarity, and the sheer uniqueness of what this coin represents. And when you think about it, this penny is more than money, it is history, art, and rarity all encapsulated in a small copper disc that has outlived generations. And when collectors see it, they are not just seeing a penny, they are seeing the story of America in 1952, the story of the Denver Mint, the story of human error leaving behind treasures, and the story of how something so small can inspire such immense value. And so as we continue unraveling this, think about the possibilities still out there, the undiscovered 1952 pennies hiding in boxes, waiting to shock the world with a new variety of error, a new level of rarity, a new reason for collectors to break records again. Because the legend of the 1952 wheat penny is not finished, it continues every time someone discovers one, every time one is auctioned, and every time a new collector dreams of finding it, which is why this coin remains one of the most captivating topics in numismatics, and why its story is so engaging for all of us who wonder how a single cent could be worth $360 million, a sum that transforms an ordinary piece of change into one of the most valuable artifacts of modern history. Last 1946 wheat penny USA coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and jaw-dropping stories in the world of rare coins, a story that captures the imagination of collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike, because today we are talking about the legendary 1946 wheat penny that has been valued at an astonishing $358 million, a coin that at first glance looks like an ordinary Lincoln wheat cent from the mid-20th century, but in reality is anything but ordinary, because beneath its simple copper surface lies a tale of minting errors, historical significance, accidental mistakes, and numismatic intrigue that has elevated this small piece of metal to become one of the most desirable and valuable coins ever struck in the United States. And as we take you on this journey, we will explore the origins of the wheat penny design, the circumstances surrounding the year 1946, the special minting quirks of the San Francisco Mint, where this coin was born, and the specific errors and anomalies that make this single specimen stand out above millions of others. Because when we talk about a coin reaching hundreds of millions of dollars in value, we are talking about something truly extraordinary that goes far beyond age or rarity alone. It's about what went wrong at the mint, what makes it unique, and why collectors are willing to pay sums that rival the price of entire art collections or luxury mansions just to own a penny. that most people would have dismissed as pocket change. So let's begin by setting the scene in 1946, a pivotal year in American history, just 1 year after the end of World War II, when the nation was transitioning from wartime production back to peacetime normalcy, when the U.S. Mint was adjusting to the post-war demand for coins and experimenting with leftover materials from wartime cent production. Because during the war years from 1943 to 1945 the composition of the penny shifted due to the need for copper in the war effort, most famously in 1943 when pennies were struck in steel coated with zinc instead of the traditional bronze alloy, and as the war ended the mint returned to producing cents in the familiar 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc alloy, but the transition was not seamless. Leftover planchets from wartime experiments remained in the mint facilities. Machines were being recalibrated, and the intense pressure to pump out millions of coins for a booming post-war economy meant that quality control was not always perfect, which is why so many unusual varieties and minting mistakes slipped through during this period, and the 1946 wheat penny we are focusing on is the crown jewel of all those mistakes, because it embodies a combination of anomalies that make it unlike any other coin in existence, with collectors and experts speculating that it was struck on a transitional planchet, possibly one of the experimental alloys tested during the war years, or even a leftover foreign coin blank that accidentally made its way into the coining presses at the San Francisco Mint, where the mint mark tells us it originated, and when we study the coin closely we find an astonishing array of striking errors, from double dies that cause Lincoln's portrait and the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," to appear shadowed and doubled, to misaligned dies that cause the rim to show off-center impressions, to variations in the wheat stalks on the reverse that look thicker or thinner depending on the angle of the strike, to unusual surface textures that suggest improper annealing of the planchet before striking, and even reports of lamination errors where the surface of the coin appears to peel or bubble slightly due to impurities in the metal mix. All of these factors combined with the coin's extraordinary survival and pristine condition make it a true one-of-a-kind marvel, and that is why collectors place such astronomical value on it, because in the world of numismatics uniqueness is everything, and when you have a coin that is not only unique but also tied to a fascinating historical era and minting context, its value skyrockets, with wealthy collectors and institutions competing to own such a piece of history. And while most 1946 wheat pennies are worth only a few cents in circulated condition and perhaps a few dollars in uncirculated condition, this particular specimen breaks all expectations by being worth $358 million, an almost mythical figure that reflects not only its physical characteristics but also its aura of mystery and prestige, because no one can say with absolute certainty how it came to be, and that mystery fuels the imagination of everyone who sees it, making it more than just a coin, making it a story, a legend, a symbol of how tiny mistakes can turn into monumental treasures. And when you think about the possibilities of what went wrong at the mint, whether it was a leftover experimental bronze zinc alloy, a steel planchet accidentally struck with a 1946 die, a foreign coin blank inserted by mistake, or a die clash that created ghost-like impressions of design elements where they shouldn't be, all of these scenarios elevate the coin from an ordinary piece of copper to a multi-million-dollar artifact. And if we dive even deeper into the errors, one of the most intriguing aspects is the possibility of a double die obverse combined with a repunched mint mark on the reverse, something that specialists in San Francisco mint varieties find incredibly rare, because mint marks were still hand-punched onto dies in 1946, meaning small variations and repunchings could create unique markers for certain coins, and if this $358 million coin indeed shows a clear repunched mint mark along with dramatic doubling on Lincoln's eye, nose, or inscriptions, then it is truly a masterpiece of minting mishaps. And what makes the story even more exciting is the idea that this coin may have sat unnoticed in circulation or in a collection for decades, passed from hand to hand, from piggy bank to cash register, until one day an astute collector noticed something unusual and realized its extraordinary significance, turning what was once a penny into a multi-million-dollar phenomenon. And this brings us to the fascinating psychology of coin collecting, because coins like this tap into our deepest human instincts for treasure, rarity, and storytelling. People don't just see a piece of metal, they see history, chance, survival, and the thrill of owning something no one else in the world has, and this is why auctions for coins like the 1946 wheat penny attract not only seasoned collectors but also investors, museums, and even celebrities who see it as both an investment and a cultural artifact, and the bidding wars that erupt over such coins only drive the value higher, sometimes into the hundreds of millions, because money alone cannot measure the excitement and prestige of owning such a piece. And when we look at the broader implications of this $358 million penny, it reminds us that even the smallest and most ordinary objects can carry incredible stories and become priceless treasures, and it also encourages people to look at their pocket change, their old jars of coins, their inherited collections, because hidden among them there could be a coin with an error, a misprint, a mistake that turns it from being worth 1 cent to being worth a fortune, and that possibility keeps the passion of coin collecting alive generation after generation, as people hope to find their own 1946 miracle penny. So the next time you see a wheat penny, take a closer look, study the date, the mint mark, the strike, the surface, because who knows, you may be holding onto a small copper disc that could change your life, just as this legendary 1946 wheat penny has rewritten the record books and captured imaginations around the world. And as we reflect on its incredible journey from minting mistake to multi-million-dollar treasure, we can appreciate the magic of numismatics, the artistry of coin design, the quirks of history, and the sheer wonder of how a penny can become worth more than the most famous works of art. And that is the true beauty of stories like this, that they show us value is not always obvious, that sometimes the tiniest flaws become the greatest treasures, and that hidden in plain sight among the coins jingling in our pockets might be the next record-breaking discovery just waiting to be found.